There it is. Well, hello again. This is Chad Broshears. I am the host of Growing Up the Wilds of Suburbia. I've actually, since the quarantine has been in place for COVID-19 here in 2020, I've actually, there's a lot going on and there's a lot of concerns that people are putting out there, a lot of misinformation, and that's convoluted with a lot of, you know, collapsing issues in other areas, frustrations in people's lives, things like that. So, what I wanted to do today's video on is more on uh, just the having a sense of purpose, uh, and destructive behaviors, and ultimately, suicide. Uh, it's something that, interestingly enough, in the statistics and when you study psychology, you find out that where great intentions can turn, it can be foiled into being bad situations or less desirable outcomes, like the suicide prevention or suicide awareness campaigns that go into areas that they're not completely foreign to the idea of suicide. It's just never been a major topic, or it's a lower level topic for a lot of people in that area. They find that statistically suicides increase significantly. So what I find is, I mean, that could also be, retaliation suicides or retaliation type behaviors. But what I really want to talk about more today, and that's linked into this, is how we have a sense of we have a desire for a sense of purpose. Purpose gives us meaning. It gives us reward. When we have a behavior that's associated with our sense of purpose, we get a sensation of satisfaction, and it's the more desirable types of feelings that we become more and more dependent on. Like the dopamine type things, which are the reward based. So when we have a clear understanding of something that we consider to be a purpose or a mission that we're doing in life, we seem to sense that satisfaction more consistently than if we don't have a sense of purpose. So the majority of the suicide cases that I've actually studied have had a lacking of sense of purpose. Now, the person can have purpose up until some sort of cataclysm, some sort of event that takes them out of that feeling. So what I found is, you can have, this is also the problem with codependency. If you feel, and you don't have to be fully, like, the idea of codependency is predominantly between two people, or a person to a group of people. But you can have a dependency on other things in your life. You can have a dependency on feeling that your job has the right progressions for you to feel honored for the position that you have, so that you feel like you're going to make some sort of career out of it. And that's where you take it from the job to a career concept. You want to grow with the company that you're with. If you don't have that, you may not have occupational satisfaction or occupational purpose, other than the outcome of that, which can be simply a paycheck, or meeting some sort of orders that you might have, like court order, something like that. But overall, it's really the result that you're focused on in the short term or superficial, not so much of the long term, the desirable reaction or response that you get out of it. So if you don't have a good, strong sense of purpose, or if the thing you are associating your purpose with, say in the earlier example of having a partner, wife, husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, or whoever the significant other is, or just a friend in your life that is that meaningful to you, that you feel like they bring to your life something that stabilizes or helps you feel like you're making progress, or associated with a sense of purpose in the long run. So you can have that sensation of purpose coming from all of those things. Now, if any one of those things is you can call that, if you want, a codependency purpose, or a purpose bound by codependency. It's not really the scientific or the psychological term necessarily for that. This is more from personal observations and rational insight, and the curiosities that I have, and all the reading that I do, and interactions with other people as well. If you have a break in that sense of the connection, that sense of value you associate with that person, you may feel purposeless. When you feel purposeless, you're more prone to, in my experiences that I feel, even myself, I feel more driven towards the undesirables, depression, self-doubt, lacking self-worth, destructive behaviors and or destructive ideas or non-constructive ideas. You don't necessarily have to go as far as saying destructive, but they could also be stationary. They have no progressions or polarization for progression, which would be constructive, destructive. It could be time wasting, which can be argued to say destructive, but I would like to make that third category for this so that it's easier for people to wrap their minds around. You may not, because it's, if you're sitting there thinking, well, what I'm doing isn't necessarily destructive and it's also not constructive, there's your third group. You don't have to force it into one and feel like you're trying to fit something that doesn't really fully fit. So it gives some sense of clarity for you, at least at the moment, because clarity can give you direction. Once something's clear or transparent, you have the ability to see further than you did prior to that. So with that lacking sense of purpose showing up, and you start into these areas of destructive behaviors, it could be excessive drinking, it could be anything that is going to have a destructive value. Now, it doesn't mean that doing something destructive today for yourself, that could be a low-level destructive that does not have a lawful infraction, doesn't really affect your relationship with other people directly, but it might be just inward. You may be going through some self-loathing that you may grow stronger having gone through, but you have to be aware of how long you're there, how much you're investing in it, and how much you're making that mean something about you in the bigger scope of things versus I'm attached to something. I want to see an outcome from this thing that I'm attached to. It's not working out. I'm not good enough. That is a great place to get to work. I'm not good enough. Or any other variation of that idea, that's a great place to get to work. You can be gripped by it. And being gripped by it isn't necessarily a bad thing. How long does it grip you? Does it suffocate you? Does it sink you? Do you need to sink in order to rise? You might need to lose whatever's weighing you down, but you're so attached to it without the awareness you're attached to it. This insightful position can produce something better and beneficial for you long term. So that's one. That's part of the destructive behaviors. Is it doesn't always mean it's a bad thing. Taking off an outfit that doesn't fit you right or is not appropriate for the event that you're at can be a benefit, even if it's uncomfortable because of the pride you took to get into that. Whether it's like you spent a lot of money on it and you found out it's the wrong dress for that ball or the wrong tuxedo. Perhaps you don't fit in it like you used to, whatever it is, you don't necessarily want to come out of it. But when you finally do and you get into the right outfit, you feel better. Same things with frames of mind. So I have had many times in my life where I've told my friends, I'm on it and I don't want to get off it yet. I am finding too much right now to abandon being upset because being upset is giving me an insight I don't have when I'm not upset. Now, mind you, I also do not personally, as a human being, default to violence. I'm not a particular fan of it, and I mean violence in the sense of physical violence. I'm not much of a fan of the emotional violences, but I'm also 40 at this point, and I've gone through my growing pains of emotion, both inward and outward. So, and then the effects on other people and the effects on me and the effects on long-term goals, all of those things. I'm not done growing there, of course, but I'm a lot more cool-headed because I've gone through enough experiences to be able to say I don't need to be upset right now because I don't really feel upset. I understand it better. The more you understand about a situation, the less emotional negative impact you get out of it. It also can reduce the excitement too because you kind of know what's going on. And when something's going the way you want it to, you may feel better about it going that direction and you get excited. Or when something's going a way that you didn't want it to, you may feel depressed or upset or negative about it. Those are usually I'm not sure how this is supposed to work, but it seems to be lining up for me, or it doesn't seem to be lining up for me. Neither one of those are bad. It's just when you get gripped by the emotion, what do you do with that? Do you stow it away? Do you consider that it might actually have value? What do you do with that information? That's all you. It's up to you. So, but know that you have a choice there. Sometimes you just need to be stuck in the minutia of upset before you can break free of it. So that can be part of the destructive behaviors, the constructive behaviors, and the just a space, the non-polarized space behaviors. You're not getting anything out of it really in the immediate. You're not going one way or the other, but you can get look back and get retrospectives out of it and insights out of it. So, and then there is, if you don't find a sense of purpose and you fall into enough of the destructive behaviors and you don't find a refuge or a clear outlet out of it, then the concepts of suicide become more and more consistent. Now, I'm not saying the suicide's associated with mental, or you can get mental illness, but you could also get physical illnesses and terminal illnesses, things like that. You can still argue and say the same thing. It's just that has a different justification that also typically, for the sense of right now, or the purpose of this conversation, I really don't want to convolute somebody's extremely heavy emotional experiences over having somebody in their life do that, where they were, they committed suicide due to a terminal illness, or they themselves may be experiencing a terminal illness now. And it can kind of mislead for the time being. Although if you really sit in it long enough and you have the insight on it, you can redirect back into what I'm talking about here. I'm not saying that all of these ideas are the absolute truths. They're rational and they have logical segues for me. And this is just more of that critical thinking process that I utilize. And I encourage people to utilize as well. I've had people say, Chad, I want to hear more of what you have to say. Speak about this, speak about that, or have a conversation about these things. One thing that I found for myself is I have a habit of being hypercritical of myself. And there's a paralysis by analysis effect that I've gone through. I'm not as prone to it anymore as much as the emotional paralysis that comes out of it. So I analyze it and then I get emotionally involved with it, which is like with this and the consistency and staying on a schedule with these videos, is the fear of being rejected because I may not have the credentials of your expectation in order to have a conversation like this. I'm not clinical. I've done some studies in that direction. I'm fascinated by it and I read on it very often. But I'm not. That's not the path that I've chosen. That's an area of interest that I'd like to enlighten a little bit more, change perspectives as much as possible to further illuminate it so that it's not such a stigma in our society. But I'm also a huge advocate for reducing what the critical and required steps are for majority of people to establish mental illness. So that doesn't start one day you wake up and you're mentally ill. The majority of those individuals go through prolonged anxiety and or some other disruptive psychological thinking processes. Predominantly, though, they originate at an anxiety-based level. But there are things that how you think today, how you think tomorrow can very well be the way that you think in 6 months. And if those have anxiety attachments to them, it can cause more issues later on that can develop into another condition. So the final thought again, and now the final thought on suicide is, I've even struggled with this myself, multiple stages of my life. And every single time that I've struggled with that, and I don't mean struggled like, highly depressed and sinking in the quicksand of depression. Just mean that there are times when those thoughts come in that I don't feel like I'm the author of the thought and that it happens to show up and quietly whispers its sentiments and its intimacies into me. It's for people that have had the issue with, or the challenges of dealing with suicidal thoughts, are they'll understand how it can have um, a seductive conversation with you. And I don't mean seductive in the predominant sense or the most common sense, but more in the persuasive sense. And for me, those thoughts were never, at least not in my adult life. Now, in my teenage years, I think that's a fairly common thing, but in my adult life, I never really felt like the author of those thoughts. But I have noticed every single time a thought like that would come into play, it always had to do with lacking a sense of purpose, not feeling like I was going to make a difference or be something different in the world that would at least stand and make a difference for the desirable outcome. So, for anyone that is struggling with those things, please do seek a licensed and qualified um, therapist. And don't hide in secrecy. Oh, it's not something that you can ever take back by admitting. If you have had thoughts that get to that point, it shows a real human side of you that other people may not know, and you just don't want them to find out without your ability to give them something as far as feedback aside from that one piece of feedback or a letter or something. Words can be misinterpreted, but who you are as a person and the way you speak, you have a better chance of getting who you are across to somebody than a letter. So I know it sounds a bit ominous, but overall, though, for me, these are the steps that are a common cause to get to that point. So um, my goal with this channel is to just get people to think more critically, think more broadly, try to get away from dogma. If you were to use the thinking process as a political concept, vote with your consciousness, not a party line, and you'll feel like you have more ownership versus following a pack. Following a pack can make you feel like you have purpose until it feels like it's turned on you. And at some point in your life, there's a very strong likelihood you might feel that way. So it's always better to learn how to keep your individual identity and how to vote with your own consciousness. My daily behaviors are my attention is a vote. It's my daily opportunity. I'm spending my daily allowance and attention on something. And if that doesn't line up with a sense of purpose, then it seems like it doesn't have as much value. So when people are like, Chad, and it will never come from this place myself, but this whole concept about being extremely intelligent, I'm very curious. I would not categorize myself, and I don't categorize myself, and I regularly tell people I'm not that intelligent. I'm just really curious. I want to know more, and I'm not satisfied with what I currently know. Although I am satisfied with what I know, I'm not satisfied enough not to learn more, consistently trying to learn. So with that, just stay critically. I just think critically. If you're not used to it, comment in the comment section. If you've had any kind of the thoughts that we've gone through or you can relate to it, put it in the comment section. Share this video with anybody that you choose that you'd like to. I know that there's a lot of people out there that are trying to make a name for themselves through satire and critical comedic responses and the trolling concept and all of that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think we can all make a bigger difference in the world. We don't need to lose our humor. We don't need to develop a heavy level of narcissistic reward factor requirements or processes. We can do this in a way that, we can take joy in somebody else's success as they will likely take joy in your success, but you do have to train people for that in your life. I'll likely do a video on that in the near future. But in the meantime, guys and girls and whomever is watching, you're not alone, and do think as critically as you can, and enroll people in the possibilities that you are. You are a possibility of something different for the future. Do you want to be another, carbon copy of somebody else, or do you want to be something and someone that is mention worthy in a desirable sense when you leave the room, not in a negative sense that you just, somebody would tear you down when you leave the room. So But that's another tactful conversation for another day. In the meantime, think critically. I care greatly for any and all of you, and I really hope to have more interactions with people in the near future. So, have a wonderful day. Again, this is Chad Broshears. I am the host of Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia, and look forward to the next video. See ya.